like you to imagine a young couple getting married. This is back in 1962 or so. Let's call them Tom and Maggie Davis. They found an old farmhouse they just fell in love with. It needs some work, but it's got a solid foundation and a good structure, and Tom is real handy. And so they make it their home. And through 3 kids and 6 grandchildren and all the remodeling and refurbishing and updating, they're now in their 70s and maybe time to soon sell the house. But through all the house has been through, it's still the house. It's been their home. Our denomination, the EC Church, is restructuring again. Like a very old, sturdy, solid foundation house that occasionally needs some upkeep, sometimes even some major renovations. Our denomination has to go through those adjustments because we can do that because of that firm foundation on God's Word and the heritage that has come to us from godly men and women. Bishop Bruce Hill has explained 2 reasons why we need to do this restructuring. One of them is an urgent reason. Quite frankly, financially, we can't afford to keep going the way we're going. But there's a second reason that is vastly more important, and that is the best ministry happens in the local church. Do you understand the difference between urgent and important? Urgent is when there's a fire in the building and we need to get everybody out of the building now. Important is when we keep the insurance premiums paid up. The urgent thing will call out to us and scream in our faces and demand immediate attention and will not let us go until we deal with it. The important things never scream at us. And even though they are often, usually, more important than the urgent things, because they don't scream at us, they sometimes get neglected. This difference between urgent and important shows up in the upper room the night before Jesus was crucified. He is preparing his friends for the ordeal that the next 24 hours will bring to them. First, he gives them the urgent piece. He's going away, and they can't go with him. And then he gives them the important piece, the quiet thing that will help get them through. He says to them, "A new command I give you, love one another." Of course, Peter heard the urgent piece. Jesus is going away, and Peter can't go with him. That's all he heard. He didn't hear this important piece. And so he asked, "Why can't I go with you right now? I'll go anywhere with you. I'll die for you." And of course, Jesus had to explain to him that he is not as rock solid as he thinks he is. But let's go back for a minute to look at this important piece that we need reminded of regularly. "A new command I give you, love one another." What does he mean, new? Love one another. This has been around for a long, long time. Remember, love the Lord your God with your heart, soul, mind, and strength, and your neighbor as yourself. That's been around for a long time. So what makes this command new? The Greek word that Jesus uses here doesn't mean something recent. It means something fresh, something not time-worn and worn out. Do you remember working up a real sweat? You work so hard that your clothes are dripping with the perspiration. And you go in and undress and either bathe or shower, and it feels so much better. You're fresher. Are you prepared to put those same clothes back on again? Yee. Jesus is saying that this command he's giving them is that fresh thing. A new command, love one another. This command, whose obedience will bring freshness. What does that look like? Then he goes on to describe what he means by loving each other. As I have loved you, so you must love one another. The way Jesus loved those first disciples is the standard of love for us. 46 times in the New Testament, some form of that phrase, one another, appears. This is a sampling of those 46. Be devoted to one another, accept one another, honor one another, live in harmony with one another, admonish one another, spur one another on to love and good deeds. Don't grumble against each other. Don't lie to each other. Be kind and compassionate to one another. Forgive one another. All these one another's spell out in detail what Jesus meant when he said, love one another. The genius of the church is that we do this even with people that we don't like. I trust that no one here is naive enough to think that everybody here likes everybody else here. Even on your best day, there will still be some folks who rub you the wrong way. Jesus didn't say, feel good about that person. Jesus said, love them. And there's a specific way to love them. And it is spelled out for us in the rest of the New Testament. And then he goes even further. By this all men will know that you are my disciples, if you love one another. The distinguishing mark of discipleship is not programs or signs, wonders, or eloquence, or ecclesiastical power. In recent years, it's become important to many believers to become a moral majority in the country and make sure that we get the right person into office so that God's will be done in this country. And Jesus says that's not how it works for the church. The way we show our neighbors, no matter what their political persuasion, no matter what their relationship with God, the way we show our neighbors what Jesus' love is like is the way we treat each other. There's a danger here. In a quote from a commentary, this does not mean that these men whom Jesus commanded, and by extension to us, we are not to become self-centered and ingrown. That's a matter of sentimentality. I love this church. Was raised in this church. Have good feelings about this church. There's a place for that. That's not the love that Jesus calls us to. It is not sentimentality. It is by Jesus' own love shared among his people. The world will always confront Christ and have to deal with him if his people love each other as he loved us. We gather on a communion Sunday to remember and to refresh ourselves in the grace that comes from sharing communion. And that means We can't do this Christian life in our own power. We can't love each other in our own power because there are lots of people that are easier to love than others. The point is not how much I like them, but how much I am prepared to honor them, to put their needs ahead of my own, to tell them when something is wrong and do it in love, to find ways to help meet their needs. I can't do that on my own, but because of Jesus living in me, He empowers me to love. I want to challenge you to practice that because it doesn't come naturally. We just as soon avoid the people we don't like. Even here, Jesus has called us to show the world what He is like by the way we treat each other. And that isn't easy. In fact, it's impossible. It's only possible when we allow His love to flow through us. Will you pray with me?